Tired that comes from waking up at 5 every morning and working until 8 at night. That's when it hit Derek. While he'd been perfecting his victim story, other people were perfecting their skills. While he'd been waiting for someone to recognize his worth, other people were building worth that couldn't be ignored. While he'd been explaining why things were unfair, other people were adapting to the unfairness and winning anyway. The marketplace has no conscience. It doesn't care if you're a good person. It doesn't care if you were raised in poverty or privilege. It doesn't care if you're tired, if you're scared, if you've been hurt before. It has one question: what value are you creating? And if your answer isn't good enough, it moves on without a second thought. This isn't cruelty, this is clarity. Think about the last time you bought something. Did you care about the salesperson's struggles? Did you pay extra because the company had a sad story? No. You asked yourself one question: does this solve my problem? That's exactly how the world evaluates you. Every employer, every client, every opportunity, they're all asking the same thing. Can you deliver results? Your feelings about whether that's fair are completely irrelevant. Derek spent the next 90 days doing something he'd never done in his entire career. He stopped preparing to look for work and started preparing to be undeniable. He didn't update his resume again. He didn't send out another generic application. Instead, he identified the 3 skills that would make him valuable in the new economy, and he learned them with the intensity of someone who understood he was out of time. 4 hours every morning before his family woke up, studying supply chain automation. 3 hours every evening after they went to bed, building proficiency in data analytics software. Weekends, he created sample projects, actual deliverables he could show rather than just claim. He stopped going to networking events where everyone complained about the job market and started contributing to online forums where people solved real problems. Nobody encouraged him. His wife was supportive but worried. His friends thought he was wasting his time, that he should just find anything and take it. His father told him to be realistic, to lower his expectations, to accept that maybe his best years were behind him. And that's where most people stop. Not because they can't do the work, but because they can't do the work without applause. They need someone to notice, someone to validate, someone to tell them they're on the right track. They're waiting for permission to become exceptional. Derek kept going because he finally understood something fundamental. Nobody cares. Not in a nihilistic, depressing way. In a liberating, empowering way. Nobody is sitting around thinking about your potential. Nobody is losing sleep over whether you're going to figure it out. They're busy with their own lives, their own problems, their own climb, which means you're free. Free from needing their approval. Free from waiting for their recognition. Free to work as hard as you want, to become as skilled as you're willing to become, to build something so undeniable that the world has to respond. Month 9, Derek didn't apply for a job. He didn't send a resume. He reached out to 5 companies with a specific offer. Let me solve this problem you're facing, and if I succeed, we'll talk about what comes next. 3 ignored him. 1 said no. 1 said yes. He delivered results in 30 days that their current team hadn't achieved in 6 months. Not because he was smarter, not because he was more talented, but because while they were working normal hours and taking normal breaks and maintaining normal boundaries, he was working like someone who understood that normal gets you normal results. They offered him a position. Then their competitor heard about what he'd done and offered him more. Within a year, he wasn't looking for work anymore. Work was looking for him. The transformation wasn't in his circumstances. It was in his understanding of how the world actually operates. Success isn't fair. It isn't guaranteed. It isn't owed to you because you showed up or because you tried or because you deserve it. Success goes to the people who create value so consistently, so undeniably, that ignoring them becomes impossible. Stop waiting for the world to care about your journey. It won't. Start working so hard that your results make caring irrelevant. There's a difference between motion and progress that most people never figure out. They confuse being busy with being productive. They mistake activity for achievement. They work 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week and wonder why nothing changes, why the gap between where they are and where they want to be keeps widening instead of closing. Alberta Baptiste understood this distinction at 28 years old, but she learned it the hardest way possible. Her parents came to this country with 2 suitcases and a dream that their children would have opportunities they never had. Her father drove a taxi 16 hours a day. Her mother cleaned office buildings at night and took care of other people's children during the day. They worked themselves into exhaustion, into illness, into old age before their time. Alberta watched this growing up and made herself a promise: she would honor their sacrifice by succeeding. She went to college on loans and scholarships. She graduated with decent grades. She got an entry-level position at a marketing firm. She showed up on time, stayed late when asked, completed every assignment given to her. 5 years passed. She was still in the same position, watching people younger than her get promoted, watching opportunities go to others while she kept her head down and worked hard. She told herself it was about timing, about office politics, about things outside her control. But late at night, when she was honest with herself, she knew something else was happening. She was working hard at the wrong things. Every morning she'd arrive early, make coffee, organize her desk, check emails, respond to messages, attend meetings, complete tasks assigned to her. She was busy from the moment she arrived until the moment she left, but none of it moved her forward, none of it made her more valuable. None of it separated her from the dozen other people doing the exact same tasks with the exact same competence. The truth she couldn't escape: her parents' work ethic had given her the foundation, but she'd mistaken the foundation for the entire building. They worked hard because they had no other choice, no other leverage, no other path. She had choices they never had, leverage they never possessed, paths they couldn't even imagine. And she was squandering all of it by treating effort as the goal instead of as the tool. One evening, she stayed after everyone left and looked at the work of the person who'd just been promoted, someone 3 years younger with half her experience. She expected to find genius. Instead, she found focus. While Alberta had been responding to every request, attending every meeting, making herself available to everyone, this person had identified the 3 things that actually mattered to the company's bottom line and had become exceptional at those 3 things. Everything else? Delegated, minimized, or eliminated. Alberta went home that night and did something she'd never done before. She audited her own time like she was a hostile investor looking for waste. She tracked every single activity for 2 weeks. The results made her sick. 47 hours of work time, 19 hours spent in meetings that produced nothing, 12 hours on email and messages that could have been handled in 2, 8 hours on tasks that literally anyone could do. That left 8 hours of actual high-value work. 8 hours out of 47 where she was building skills, solving real problems, or creating something that mattered. She'd been working hard her entire career at being mediocre. The next Monday, everything changed. Not because she worked more hours, she actually worked fewer. But she rebuilt every single day around one principle: if this activity doesn't make me more valuable, it doesn't happen. 4:30 in the morning became her new starting line. Not at the office, but at her kitchen table with one goal: learn the skills that would make her indispensable. She identified what the company actually needed, not what they said they needed in meetings, but what kept the executives up at night. Revenue growth, customer retention, market differentiation. She taught herself advanced data analytics. Not because someone asked her to, not because it was in her job description, but because she recognized that decisions in her company were being made on gut feeling and past experience while their competitors were making them on predictive models and real-time data. 6 weeks of 4:30 mornings. No exceptions. Sick? Study anyway. Tired? Study anyway. Friends having a party? Study anyway. She stopped negotiating with herself about whether she felt like it. Feelings became irrelevant. The work got done because the work getting done was the only thing that mattered. Then she did something most people are terrified to do. She stopped saying yes to everything. When someone asked her to attend a meeting that wasn't critical, she declined. When someone tried to pull her into a project that would consume her time without advancing her value, she set boundaries. When her manager asked her to take on administrative work, she respectfully explained that her time would be better spent on strategic initiatives. Some people didn't like it. Some people thought she'd become difficult, demanding, too ambitious. She lost the reputation of being the nice, helpful person who was always available. She gained something far more important. She became the person who delivered results nobody else could deliver. 3 months after she started her new routine, she walked into her manager's office with an unsolicited analysis showing exactly where the company was losing customers and a detailed plan for how to fix it. Not theories, not suggestions. Actual data, actual solutions, actual projected outcomes. Her manager looked at the work for a long time, then asked a simple question: how long did this take you? 6 weeks. You did this in addition to your regular work? I did this instead of pretending my regular work mattered. That conversation could have gotten her fired. Instead, it got her promoted. Not immediately. They made her prove she could deliver on the plan first. She spent the next 4 months implementing every detail she'd proposed. Early mornings, late nights, weekends when necessary. But here's what was different. She wasn't working hard to look busy. She was working hard to produce something undeniable. The results came in ahead of schedule and exceeded projections. Customer retention improved by 18%. Revenue from existing accounts increased by 23%. Suddenly, executives who'd never known her name were asking for her input. Within a year, she'd been promoted twice. Within 2 years, she was running a department. But the transformation wasn't about titles or salary increases. It was about understanding that hard work without strategic focus is just slow-motion failure. Most people never make this distinction. They pride themselves on being busy, on working long hours, on being exhausted at the end of every day. They wear their fatigue like a badge of honor. Meanwhile, someone else is working just as hard but working on the things that actually compound, that actually accumulate value, that actually create leverage. You can spend 10 years perfecting the ability to do tasks that don't matter, or you can spend 10 months becoming exceptional at the one thing that does. The effort might be the same. The outcome will be completely different. Alberta's parents worked themselves to exhaustion and barely survived. She works herself to exhaustion and thrives. The difference isn't effort. It's direction. It's the brutal honesty to admit when you're working hard at the wrong things and the courage to strip everything else away. The world doesn't reward you for trying. It doesn't give you points for effort. It doesn't care how tired you are or how much you sacrificed or how many hours you put in. It asks one question: did you produce something valuable? And if you didn't, all those hours were just practice at being tired. There comes a moment in every transformation when you realize the people around you aren't coming with you. Not because they're bad people, not because they don't care about you, but because growth requires you to become someone they don't recognize anymore. And most relationships in your life were built for the person you used to be, not the person you're becoming. Colin Hartwell figured this out on a Tuesday night at a sports bar where he'd met his friends every week for 7 years. He was 35 years old, sitting in the same booth they always sat in, listening to the same conversations they always had, complaints about bosses, jokes about wives and girlfriends, predictions about games that didn't matter, plans for the weekend that would look identical to last weekend and the weekend before that. Something had shifted in him over the previous 6 months. He'd decided, really decided, not just wished or hoped that he was going to become a civil engineer. The problem was, he'd spent the last 12 years working construction. Good money, honest work, but he'd hit the ceiling of where that path could take him. He looked at the crew leaders, the site managers, the people 20 years ahead of him, and he saw exactly where he'd end up if nothing changed. So he'd enrolled in night classes, started with community college to fill the gaps in his education with plans to transfer to a 4-year program. It meant studying after 10-hour days on job sites. It meant his body aching while he tried to focus on calculus. It meant spending money on textbooks instead of the things his friends spent money on. That Tuesday night, he mentioned he couldn't make their usual weekend plans because he had a major exam. The response wasn't supportive curiosity. It was mockery disguised as humor. College boy thinks he's too good for us now. What? You gonna wear a suit and forget where you came from? Engineers don't know what real work is anyway. He laughed it off, but something hardened inside him. These were people he'd known since high school. People he'd trusted, celebrated with, mourned with, and they were threatened by his decision to want more. The following week, his girlfriend of 3 years told him she missed the old him. The fun version, who'd go out on weeknights, who'd take spontaneous trips, who wasn't always exhausted from studying. She didn't say it directly, but the message was clear. Choose between this relationship and this dream. He chose the dream. Not because he didn't love her, but because he finally understood that anyone who needs you to stay small so they can stay comfortable doesn't actually want what's best for you. They want what's easy for them. The next few months were the loneliest of his life. He'd leave the job site and head straight to the library, because his apartment felt too quiet, too empty, too full of reminders of the life he'd walked away from. His phone stopped ringing as often. The group chat he'd been part of for years went silent whenever he contributed. Weekend invitations dried up. He ate lunch alone, sitting in his truck, with textbooks spread across the passenger seat. While his former crew joked and complained together, he worked through problem sets. While they went out after work, He went to study groups with people 10 years younger who looked at him like he didn't belong there either. The students his age thought he was too old, too rough around the edges, too different from them. His co-workers thought he was delusional, wasting his time, trying to be something he wasn't. He existed in this strange middle space where nobody understood what he was doing or why it mattered. There were nights he almost quit, not because the work was too hard, but because the isolation was crushing. Humans aren't built for this kind of solitude. We're wired for belonging, for acceptance, for community. Every part of his biology was screaming at him to go back, to apologize, to fit in again. But he kept showing up, to class, to the library, to the drawing board where he practiced technical skills until his hands cramped. He kept showing up because he discovered something most people never learn. Comfort is expensive, and the price is your potential. 18 months into his journey, something unexpected happened. He started meeting different people, not through networking events or forced social situations, but naturally, through the work itself. A study partner who was also returning to school after years in the workforce. A professor who saw something in his practical experience that the younger students lacked. A visiting lecturer who offered him an internship that would have been impossible from his old life. These weren't better people than his old friends. They were just people moving in the same direction he was moving. And suddenly, instead of defending his choices, he was surrounded by others making similar sacrifices. He learned something crucial during those isolated months. You don't find your people by looking for them. You find